All right, we are live.
Okay, no countdown. We're definitely live, though. I know we have the audience out there. Ray and Lynn are already with us. Probably Paula, if I know her, is out there, too.
Trying another platform again today.
Every
Super,
week, a new platform.
super challenging for old people. Oh, I can see that we have some viewers, but it's not giving me the details. That's unfortunate.
Or the option to show them on a chat or comments or something.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Okay.
Or maybe no one's commented. Anyway, got a full show, so let's get going.
Okie dokie. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. We're, as Skyler said, messing around with different platforms, trying to find the best one that doesn't freeze pictures and operates for him. So another day, another platform. Susan Kirks is here. Hello, Susan, and thanks for throwing a comment in so we know we're up and running and can communicate with our beloved audience.
BJ, very
easy now.
Is that a just scrambling text, or did you mean to type D?
I think it's a term of endearment for Susan.
Okay. There's a good morning from Paula.
GM.
Jack, I am going to do a recent event from my end. And that recent event was me taking my girlfriend to the ER. And I don't go to hospitals because I don't trust them at all. And I don't get sick. We're both vegan. I was going to say I don't get sick because I'm vegan, but she had kidney stones, a genetic thing. Wow. Anyway, this was on the screen in the room, in the waiting room, and I'll blow it up really quick so you guys can see a little bit better. And I'll get to why this matters.
I'm feeling, just looking at that, I feel healthier already.
Right?
A cartoon pasture monoculture, row cropped in the background with two indicator trees left remaining of the wildlife, right?
So here's the part about me that I get criticism for. Let's just accept that it's not body shaming, it's health shaming. I was out on the street, parked in the car for a long time because we had the dogs and I would go in and out. But Jack, it was a parade of blobs who could barely walk that were working in the healthcare industry, heading to work in front of me. Just like the opposite of what you would think of a healthy human being in the healthcare industry. And I started combine that with the image that was on that computer screen, and it reminded me that the healthcare industry doesn't really include a healthy diet in their recommendations to people. And it takes me back to that book that woke my eyes up called Potatoes Not Prozac. And it said, you don't just buy medicine at the store to get healthy. You need to look at your food as medicine and stop putting poison in your body. How can you be surprised that you're getting sick when you're constantly poisoning yourself? Well, let me take that a little bit further. I know why. Because our healthcare industry doesn't tell you very much, at least, maybe it's improving, how important what you're putting in your body is to you being healthy. How many people have you had come to you, Jack, and give a declaration of these symptoms they've suffered with their whole life and that the medical industry couldn't help them with suddenly went away when they went to a vegan diet? I've had a lot of really amazing testimonies of that sort.
Is that rhetorical, or you want me to?
I actually am curious.
Okay, well, I'm letting you unfurl all of your flags here. I mean, it's a huge topic, my friend. So we'll just touch on a few light topics, like indictment of the medical industry. We have a nurse who's listening, who's been in the field and probably has stuff to say as well if you want to type anything, Lynn. But yeah, I mean, certainly the fair criticism, despite Hippocrates, who we refer to, with his famous oath, said, "Let medicine be thy food, and food be thy medicine." But you and I, in the vegan community, and we know many, many healthy vegans who really rarely get sick and rarely avail themselves of the modern medical establishment. But it isn't just diet; it's exercise and stress and lifestyle and
Of
it's part of
course.
our culture and all that stuff. So it's very complicated. But certainly, I get your point that you're pointing at.
Well, I'm going to hone in on the food because when you leave the hospital, I'm trying to remember because I don't do it. What do you leave with? A bag of pills, right?
Yeah.
And the recommendation is taking the pills. That's a much bigger part of their recommendation to you than, hey, what are you eating? And here's what you should be eating. I just feel like there's very little of that and more of a push. Keep taking these pills, but don't change the fact that you're poisoning yourself.
Yeah. In fact, as you describe it there, the push. What's the push of the doctors? That's the big one. My little anecdote in this stuff is my father was in his 70s. He walked around New York. He lived in Manhattan, but physically relatively inactive. He never broke a sweat or did any exercise like that, or even walked briskly for a mile nonstop to get exercise. So, 30, 40 pounds overweight, 6'3" guy who weighed, 230 instead of 190 or something, and 200, whatever. And he went to see a doctor, and he was, the usual thing of high blood pressure and high cholesterol levels. So my father told the story that the doctor said, "Look, Alfred, my father, you're not going to change your diet. You're not, you're older. You're not going to give up eating what you're eating. You're not going to change your life. So here are these pills, and you should take one of these things every day." And my father, dutifully, of the generation that listened to the doctor in the white lab coat, did. And he said it really started messing with he didn't feel good on them. Sleepy, and affected his sexual performance and headaches, and then he just stopped taking the pills. And that's kind of as opposed to what doctors could do, which is say, "Alfred, this is what's wrong with you, and this is totally curable. I'm going to really ride you now. I'm going to get you to a health practitioner here in the hospital and change your diet, get you on an exercise regimen, probably bring in your son if he's willing to help because he lives around you or whatever, and make a change." And that's, as you say, that's not the push. The push is, here's some pills because the big pharma has given them money and free pills to get them hooked on drugs.
Good morning to Corinne. And Paula has a great comment if you want to read it, Jack.
Sure. Thank you. That was my starting. Oh, interesting. That was my starting point for veganism in 1979, 5 years before becoming a vegan. A loved one in the hospital. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Being fed pudding and chicken fried steak.
What does that mean? A loved one in the hospital. She was the.
She was witnessing a loved one in the hospital being fed.
Oh, got it.
Things.
Got it.
That's what I think it meant.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So she saw a family member or a beloved one being fed fried pudding and chicken fried steak. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. My dad was locked up against his will and toward the end, and against my will. I couldn't save him from being thrown away the way that Americans do with their elderly. But I have clear images of him being fed things that I would not touch. Like I wouldn't touch it if I was starving. Because it wasn't just that it wasn't vegan food. It was the cheapest, most processed, basically a TV dinner meat shit coming out. And I'm like, how do you expect anyone not to die? Like you guys clearly want these people to be sick.
And yet it's worse than that. They don't, not consciously, meaning the people who are giving them the food aren't out to hurt them, but it's part of the system that's set up. Good morning, evening, Stephen Axelrod in Switzerland. Skyler, may I ask you more about what you just said? That's pretty heavy stuff, or would you prefer not to go into something that personal?
I don't have a problem talking about it, but like you said, it is heavy. I don't know how quickly we'll move away from it. That all happened in the time of my life that I was changing to veganism, and we often talk about how we treat other species, but I witness how we treat our own species. As soon as you don't have a voice, as soon as you've lost the power to defend yourself, and humans start making decisions based on bullshit and convenience and money, not on actual compassion.
But you said your father was put in a situation that
Deme- yeah, he was starting to suffer from dementia, but certainly wasn't ready to be locked up when they locked him up. And
meaning
but I
institutionalized him, put him in a facility where
yeah, they put him in a old folks home, whatever you want to call it, where the care is just garbage, the cheapest people you can find from, you know, a lot. This was Florida, so Haiti, in this case. But I, of course, was trying to learn about curing things like that, and you start reading, and you're like, oh wow, they're feeding him exactly what they shouldn't be feeding him. If in fact we're going to pretend that you care about maybe not pushing them to the end.
take a look at Leah's comment that she just wrote. I thought she might have something to say here. It's personal stuff, but Skyler, this is so similar to my mom too. They feed her shit, and it kills me to watch. Yeah, yeah. And you need money. You need a lot of money. I know a family that had enough money to spend, tens or even hundreds of thousands through the year to get them out of those facilities and put them in really high quality care. It's monstrously expensive.
You know what, you said something earlier, that in a way you defended the staff. You're like, well, they're not intentionally poisoning them, we just don't know. How the hell do we not know about the things we're putting in our bodies? How do we not understand the importance of food and what food does? Like, we're the most intelligent species. We know 900 ways to barbecue something, but don't know what a healthy diet actually is.
We're intelligent enough to leave the atmosphere of our planet and explore other, our nearest satellite or asteroid, the moon, whatever that is, and then other planets now, but not intelligent enough to take care of the one we're born on that we can't leave and shouldn't leave. So yeah, welcome.
Well, I'm going to force us to move on because I claimed that these were going to be short, okay. And I'm going to put something even worse up.
Oh, and Corinne has a cheery note. She says, that's where we're all going.
Yeah. Whee! Kill me before you put me in a old folks home. Thank you.
My little forest fantasy, I was with some friends about a year ago in a beautiful redwood grove. We walked off the trail so we could be completely alone, damp forest floor and these gorgeous trees and a creek nearby. And it was kind of a dreary, rainy, wonderful, damp day. And I thought, this is where I want to die. This is the place I want to go. And and my fantasy, which I could do today, but I'm not ready to die yet, is to literally dig my own grave. Spend a bunch of hours. Do my last exercise. Dig a 6 foot deep, 6 foot by 4 foot hole. Get in it. Take my little tincture of magic fairy leave the planet dust, and then I would have to have friends, allies, who would then be committing a crime to just push the dirt in over me. Happy guy. That's it. While I'm still able, as opposed to, as Corinne said, where we end up incapacitated and perhaps alone even.
Well, I watched my father's last hours, and I saw my girlfriend's dad when he passed, and it was not a nice setting. I was like, this is not where I want my soul leaving my body, in this cold, nasty room. Anyway, Andy and I will be composted. Yeah, and why not? I've said it in another show. I'll come back to it, but how a lot of people say, "Oh, we're the top of the food chain," and I say we're not even in the food chain. I take that further. We're not even in the food chain after we die. We're still. Most people don't allow themselves to become compost.
Like, you mean in a velvet and mahogany box?
Yeah. Or in a tomb,
Well, fortunately, we're in Marin and Marin adjacent, so a lot of us do want to do it otherwise. Although typically there's a way to still, it still costs $2,000 to $5,000 to be composted. It still has to be, commodified and sold.
I want to be composted too.
We should have the composting club, the postmortem composting club, the PMCC.
Oh, it's a new service that's available. Okay. Oh, it's 9:18. I'm forcing us to move on, but I'm glad everyone got entertained by that opening
Last one,
darkness.
I was thinking I could just take a Sawzall and open up the Syncerator.
You see how Jack just completely ignores my desperate attempts to move on. Like, he doesn't even hear me talk.
Well, that's because I was thinking of something funny that I was going to say, Skyler.
Right, and I have a lot of them too, but if we keep doing that, we will not move on.
Okay, I will let it go, but God, was it funny. Your move, buddy.
We got to fit in the darkness. This is Skyler, the darkest. I'm the bad guy on the show, but I am so sick of YouTube feeding me all of these sad stories about everyone who has a kid with a problem, and then they show the parents, and I'm like, well, fucking no wonder your kid has a problem. And then this is a different one. This looks like it's more like a third world country issue, and oh, he doesn't have any friends. They call him ugly. Okay, it sounds like the problem here is the human beings that are surrounding him. But read the caption: a baby with a cleft is born every 3 minutes. And if anyone is darker than me, let me know. Guys, I don't have sympathy for the human race because wildlife are born pretty much perfect around the clock, and our species is wiping them out. Our species is wiping out animals that are perfect by being born, and we are desperately trying to make sure that those of us that have problems have some sort of expensive surgical treatment and get to move on and pass on their bad genes. In the wild, you're either born close to perfect or you don't survive. Human beings, you just survive no matter what. And I'm sure that pissed off a lot of people. So,
well, you've got Leah as one of your champions, and in my way too as well. But she says you're not the bad guy, Skyler. You just don't give a shit about offending people with truth.
Well, thank you. I kept that one short, but I'll be curious to see if anyone responds to that and how they respond to it.
I had someone fairly recently, tell me, don't please, Jack, don't bring up the topic of an animal holocaust. That doesn't play well. And this was a non-Jewish person, and I'm a Jewish person, so I'm comfortable with that. But what you said about animals, and of course, the dangerous waters, not that I care either, that you're wandering into is, hey, there's problems with humans in the world, and humans are important. Don't talk about the animals. Or if you talk about animals, also talk about humans. And you, me, and Leah are aligned like, no. We're speaking about animals. That's our issue. We're choosing it. Stay away from me with your human issues. You go talk about that if you want to. Don't tell me what to talk about.
And I've thought about this a lot because I've seen the debates with Earthling Ed, and a lot of the people against them will say, humans have all these problems. Why aren't you focusing on humans? Yeah. And what I wish that they would say, because this is what I think, anyone who says that also is not helping humans. You're looking for an excuse not to be compassionate, which means you're using the excuse of, hey, humans are suffering. Why aren't you helping them? I guarantee you that the person who says that is not helping humans. They don't spend their days during mercy actions or whatever affliction that they were referencing. If the first thought you have when you see an animal suffering, a non-human animal suffering, is, well,
what about?
That's fine because.
What about?
Say anything. I mean, anything that comes out of their mouth after that excuses the horror that they just saw, then I'm not going to think very highly of that person. I'm going to put my money on that. If I go and I look at their daily lives, it isn't centered around reducing the suffering of human beings.
Takes me back to that Eric Fromm bit that we played last week, talking about the pathologies of our human societies now, how we're all disconnected from nature. And anyway, that fits into that issue that somebody can't be compassionate for another species in that moment, but has to, sort of push it away and flip back to whatever their problem was. Oh, by the way, I spoke to Will Tuttle. You know who that is?
I do.
And we had a conversation yesterday, caught up on a bunch of things. And I asked him about Eric Fromm. He said, "Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I know him very well. I studied him in school, and knew all about him. First person I spoke to who knew the name Eric Fromm. And I mean, of course, Will is a 35 or 40-year vegan. So I was very thrilled to have him tell me more about what he had learned about the man.
Wow, Corinne. Leah, how would you respond to that bumper sticker? I saw a bumper sticker that once said, "Plants and animals have to die to make room for your fat ass." Isn't that body shaming on a bumper sticker?
That is so not only angry, but sarcastic. I wonder, like, who's going to understand what the point of that one is. Although, obviously, Paula would love that bumper sticker.
I want to slap labels on people's backs that say, this person caused 200 acres of rainforest to feed. Okay, moving on again.
I want to talk about the hospital picture there, that wonderful illustration. I go in to feel well, and I see a cartoon fantasy that doesn't exist of a cartoon cow, like happy on a sterile green grass field lawn with an indication of like what looks like a couple Italian cypress or something. And that, gosh, just looking at that picture of that fantasy that does exist, but references tortured animals, makes me feel healthier. Right. Look at that. Where are the animals? It's like 100 acres or 20 acres in the background with not a single living creature anywhere on it except the foreground one who's tortured and unrealistically slim because it hasn't been forcibly impregnated yet, perhaps.
Let's please think about the fact that bovines produce a pregnancy fluid that turns baby bovines into 500-pound animals in a matter of weeks. And human beings have decided that's what we should be consuming, not just when we're young, but our entire lives. And somehow something goes wrong.
And for any non-vegans that dare wander into this show, we're the only species, the most intelligent one on the planet, supposedly, that drinks regularly the milk of another mammal species and does it beyond infancy, but through our entire adult lives, right into the early shallow grave we put ourselves in.
What are the ones that do it occasionally?
I think I've read that some primates, if they can get access to some, don't ask me, they're not getting it from a milk truck from Clover or from our buddy Albert Strauss, but if I have in my head like.
Are you talking about the animal has been killed and you go ahead and consume the udder? Or are you talking about actually going and sucking milk from another species or something?
Neither of those. And I now I'm a real dickhead podcaster. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Just blabbered. And I got to fact check my co-host.
Well, no, I'm not saying for sure. I'm saying I heard somebody say.
Let's be better.
I'm just asking questions. Will all the Jews fit in the oven at once? I'm just asking. I'm not sexist.
Everybody. No one knows better than me. Trust me, folks. We got Jack Trump on the show with me.
If you don't mind, Jack Rogan.
Oh, Jack Rogan. Yeah.
I did read some commentary. He had. Who's the British dude who used to be a vegan and is just Russell. Hello, come on.
Oh, who sent this? Did you send it or Leah send it?
Honestly, I'm under the weather.
The influencers that are spreading misinformation about
yes, that's right. I did send it to you. It was a
different show.
Yeah. Okay, so back to you, Skyler. Focus. Your next item you want to get.
All right, so this one you'll appreciate, Jack, because it's pretty close to us agreeing. But let me be very clear: we still don't.
Well, I'll be the judge of that, buddy. I disagree with you.
Okay. Let me. Yes, Russell Brand. That's right. Which is disappointing because that guy can be, or at least could be at one point in time, a pretty brilliant comedian. Okay, so I actually took this image this morning, which goes along with what I want to talk about.
Presidio, right?
Yeah. And Jack, the Presidio Trust is targeting Monterey cypress trees as part of their restoration program because historically according to human beings, Monterey cypress weren't found here. Now, I just want to say why this is different from what you and I talk about, because you'll go so far as to say that an quote unquote invasive species from another continent still deserves the right to life. And here's what I think is astonishingly different in this case. This tree was not brought here from another continent by human beings via boat, plane, etc. This is actually, if you look at California Native Plant Society, is a tree that has been found in this area, and it's included in its historic range in multiple locations on the Central Coast, but is most notably associated with Monterey, thus the Monterey cypress. Now, I don't doubt that human beings planted cypress trees here that would not have otherwise been here, but I do doubt that there weren't any or that there couldn't at some point, because Monterey is just a couple hours down the coast and the habitat is very similar. The sand, the weather, the soil. The idea that just over time a Monterey cypress wouldn't have grown here is a little bit crazy to me. And it's certainly crazier than thinking, or I feel like they're looking at a tree, a California tree, the way I look at ripgut brome from Europe. And I'm like, here's the thing. If I appreciate the effort, the idea of getting it to where it was, if that's going to help endangered species that in this case, do rely upon some of the plants that were found here and don't exist here anymore. But are we in such a luxurious state of health in the planet that we can do a fun little science experiment in which we get everything in one spot back to exactly where we decided it was at one point in time? I'm feeling like we can't spare any trees at this point. As Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump both remove trees on a level that I can't even wrap my head around, here are the good people also targeting trees. We're not even talking about the eucalyptus from Australia. We're talking about cypress from down the coast. And I probably wouldn't be quite as pissed off about it, except that I said something to the community here, and people turned around and regurgitated what they read. It's not native. It's not native. It's what I sound like to you probably when we talk about
Thank you, my friend, for that awareness. Thank you very much. Thank you. And
but you understand the difference.
I lived for 12 years. I lived within a mile and a half of where that vehicle was parked there in the Presidio. I used to run through there all the time, and it was surrounded by Monterey pine and Monterey cypress, which were labeled non-native. They weren't necessarily invasive. They were labeled non-native, whatever that means, even though their range was 50 miles, 75 miles to the south. And that's when, for me, I hope that even someone like you would begin to sort of tease more into the issue and realize, well, you and I agree. What we overlap largely on this one with very tiny space in our Venn diagram. But that machine is going to, let's say, I don't know whether they're trimming those trees, or I know they're actually killing lots of cypress trees. I used to run also in Land's End, which has cypress, Monterey pine and cypress, and they were killing those to restore the area. And of course, all of Golden Gate Park was sand dunes. And all of Golden Gate Park, which is a mile from the Presidio here in coastal San Francisco, was planted. It's artificial. So this is egregious in so many ways. It's such an outrageous example of, let's say that, that guy is not, looks like prepared to cut down that cypress. It's next to where the cypress is between. But I always go to specifics. What are those trees doing? What functions are they performing? What habitat are they providing? What animals are they home? And then what harm are they doing to justify killing trees during a climate crisis caused in large part by deforestation?
Well, they've been here for so long that, you also need to consider the animals that have now adopted them, because I've listened to owls in those trees, and I'm guessing coyote dens are built somewhere under the root system.
Of course.
And it it's
It's a tree.
infuriating. It's infuriating, quite frankly. And you know what? Maybe in time you could reduce them, but like just wiping them out, and you're gonna slowly like put in some brush over time. I do appreciate the effort to get to a native status, but here's the problem, Jack.
Why? Why? No, no. Skyler, sorry, I'm going to mix it up with you, buddy. Why? In that, let's be specific. In that spot, on that sand dune, in that forest, why would you want to reduce the number of cypress trees? What would that
I
do?
don't want to reduce the number of cypress trees, but if here's the thing, they could keep a lot of the cypress trees while still accomplishing their goal, because some of the cypress trees that they're chopping down are up on the crest where here's the excuse. Don't interrupt before I finish. If in fact you're trying to bring back a certain plant that was only found in the Presidio sand dunes, because that helps this butterfly or whatever the reason is, and that can't exist under the canopy of all of these cypress trees, like, okay, maybe you're not supposed to have all of these cypress trees, but to here's the thing, you don't know what was going to happen, and the experts, the people that are in charge, don't always know what they're talking about, because I have an even worse example in which I volunteered for the Golden Gate chapter of Audubon Society on the south side of San Francisco.
Yeah, big nativists. Audubon. Yeah.
Guess what I witnessed that day. They were polling seaside daisy that are native to right here,
Uh-huh.
because seaside daisies to them are only supposed to be on this side of San Francisco and not that side of San Francisco.
I'm pretty sure Audubon partners with Dow Chemical, receives money for them in order to talk about getting rid of invasive species, and Audubon's going to help. Audubon is the worst sellout, not to mention eating chicken sandwiches while enjoying birds, but forget veganism. The whole thing with native, non-natives is
Well,
all
it gets
Audubon.
worse.
I'm sorry?
It gets worse
Okay. I believe you.
because, and I filmed this, you know me. I have it all on camera. They were leaving behind the slender oats and the ripgut brome while pulling the seaside daisy. And I said, "Why are you leaving these here?" They didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
They didn't fucking know what the most invasive plants in California were while they were targeting seaside daisy, because it's not supposed to be on, not even Monterey, not even hours away, but the other fucking side of San Francisco. So yeah, there's plenty of examples that show that humans, just because they looked up something in history, still don't know what they're talking about.
Whereas, did you happen to see George Werthner's blog, which was 2 days ago? And I just sent it out. I sent a link to his blog, and it was called "Should We Garden Our Forests?" And it gets
Yeah, I
into the
saw.
same. It gets into the same issue. There's of course he's a forester that he's referencing out of the state of Oregon. James Johnson, formerly at Oregon State University Forestry School, and now he's at the University of Oregon's Institute for, get this, Resilient Organizations, Communities, and Environments. Doesn't that sound nice and important? And of course, he's noticing some pine trees were dying, and the solution, of course, is to kill the young trees because they're competing with the elders. I mean, to talk about, you were so generous. I was surprised, Kyle. I'm going to insult you by saying you were uncharacteristically generous by saying sometimes these experts don't know what they're talking about. So often these experts are completely clueless and want to restore it back to the way it was 100 years ago, even though it's a completely different climate now. The trees are stressed because it's a warming climate. So we're going to
Who's taking in
that worked in a moisture climate, even though in 2 years from now it's too hot for them to live. But no, we have money to do these restoration projects, so we're going to frickin' do it.
And it's so funny. In your example, they're getting rid of the young trees because they're hurting the old trees. Here, the Presidio Trust is using the excuse that these older trees are past their prime and ailing.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
Whatever, according to the experts.
and the experts are idiots. I mean, they're foresters. And I was having, my kind fellow activist friends, some of who are on this broadcast, we're doing the chant is foresters, deforest, foresters. Foresters are people who, what is the job of forester? To reduce the amount of forest on Earth. That's their job. Sometimes they would plant for a timber company, but mostly it's for the U.S. Forest Service is cutting down trees and selling them for dollars for their agency to timber companies. That's the job of forester.
George cranks out a lot of stuff, and usually I can't get past the title unless I'm having a really good day, because I'm like, okay, this one's going to make me suicidal.
Don't you mean homicidal?
Yeah. I don't know. Can I say that?
No, you shouldn't. So I'll say it for you. So George is awesome. And even the great Ken Brower, whom I respect as a prodigious writer and, a steady guy. He and I don't agree on invasive species, by the way, but putting that aside, he calls George Werthner an editorial machine.
Yeah.
That's how impressed he is with his output. I do want to talk to George at some point and just kind of bow at his feet and thank him for inspiring me 10 years ago about rangeland management and wildfire issues. And folks, if you get my newsletter, do read the article I should link to it. I'm going to put a blog up. I just got to point to more people to.
I would have loved to have Laura on here countering either of us or agreeing with either of us on this particular issue.
Yeah.
Because we can at least narrow it down to a tree that you could make a pretty good argument would have ended up here if, in fact, it wasn't already here. Because, like I said before, according to Calscape, this is part of its historic range. Here, I'm going to go even darker because I had this additional thought. It made me think about the ranchers of Point Reyes who decided at this point in time, this is what it was like. We think that that's important, and that's what Point Reyes should look like from here on out. I just compared ranchers who are in the top of my list of bad people with people who are trying to do good in restoration work. And that's the damage that can be done when humans disconnect themselves, because to just leave out entirely the native animal species that have adjusted to the cypress being here, leaving that out of your consideration, leaving out, as you pointed out, climate change, working so hard to bring back plants that aren't going to be able to handle it.
Like redwood trees, like redwoods are stressed. Right. They cut down eucalyptus trees saying they shouldn't be here. They're from Australia, even though they're living in the ground for 150 years. And then they try to plant redwoods in the East Bay. I've seen this, and very few of the redwoods survive because it's not the climate that was 150 years ago when they were blossoming here.
I did talk to one of the naturalists here about the eucalyptus, and she said, I've talked about how slender oats and ripgut brome put chemicals in the soil to fight against competitors. Mm-hmm. She said that the eucalyptus do that also. My question is, how deadly of chemicals do you think a native California tree is putting into the soil to fight other native California plants compared to one that came from another continent?
See, the trouble is when you and I talk is we have a different lexicon. So I don't use native, non-native, and
all you have to do is answer my question and not get philosophical. Well, what are the chances that the root system of a tree that is supposed to be in California is a friendlier chemical than one that came from somewhere else?
Depends on the tree. You got to be specific. It's meaningless. Doesn't matter where.
Which tree did I name?
Well, you didn't. I'm saying you're asking me a general question. It's like which people.
No,
I'm going to argue with you whether you want me to or not, even though I don't know what we're arguing about. Damn it.
All right. Let's move on to the water waivers.
Let me just add one point. Redwood trees do the same thing. They push out competition. They also put chemicals in the soil. And which chemical is stronger? Well, it depends what should be growing around them and who's to determine what that is. In other words, the argument is eucalyptus trees drop a lot of leaf litter. They poison the soil against other species. I've heard all this stuff. And I'd say, okay, great in theory. What plants are they killing? What biodiversity loss are they creating by being here? When I mentioned this to Ken Brower,
I can think of redwood sorrel immediately, which exists with redwood trees.
Yeah.
Both native and both work together.
Yeah, very true. And again, for me, there's giant stands, hundreds of eucalyptus trees up in the East Bay Hills to look at and say, okay, what?
I don't see a lot happening under them off the top of my head.
I don't see a lot of happening other than redwood sorrel underneath redwood groves. but I see prodigious service from them sequestering huge amounts of carbon with their giant fire-resistant trunks. The leaves will burn, but the trunks are incredibly fire-resistant. One of the most fire-resistant trees, actually. They're adapted for it. And again, I'm not saying plant more eucalyptus trees, although I think they're going to survive the growingly heated and dry climate. But what harm are they doing? What harm do they actively do? And again, back to the cypress tree there, for me, that's a great example that you started with, because it shows like there's no end to it. Once you take a war on nature, and I think you and I might agree in the general here, once you say we humans, because we're so wise, get to pick winners and losers, and more specifically, not just plant winners, which I'm in favor of. Plant whatever you want to plant, folks, but stop killing the so-called losers, because boy, can we be way off base on that, especially when you turn it into a capital enterprise where you make money by proposing restoration, which is mostly killing.
Okay, I don't have a graphic for our next one. I was just reading the news that I wouldn't say that this is a very good look for RRI celebrating the water waivers being unanimously approved. But even though we don't know, I mean, apparently it's still vague exactly what this means, like that they're going to make moves to maybe be a little bit stricter. But here's what, even if we don't figure out the rest of those details, here's a takeaway for people. Ranchers have been operating using water waivers, which exempts them from the Clean Water Act, which allows them to pollute the way that, let's say, a chemical company with lobbyists gets the government to allow them to dump shit into the streams. It shouldn't matter what the California Coastal Commission says or what the regional water board says. If in fact ranchers are truly stewards of the land, they should be trying to do the best thing that they can to already have clean water there. Why are these good people always taking any shortcut given to them that hurts the planet to increase their profits? It doesn't sound like stewards of the land to me.
Well, we're aligned on this one, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. No, it's just the whole waiver thing. And it was interesting to watch our activist group kind of divided, like, well, let's pass this, because my understanding of it, which is, very cursory, was it puts more of these regions together under one rule, although the rule is way too lax, of course, and allows pollution. And the other was, no, don't agree with this. We have to stop this granting of any waivers and allowing any pollution. Why is there not, which there is not, there wasn't and hasn't been, and there won't be now in the near future, according to this recent regulation, more testing, regular testing, stringent testing, released to the public immediately, and then penalties, of course, for violations of not like, well, we'll give you a free pass on this because you're ranchers. This silly, golden pass to pollute some because you're ranchers. That's what's going on, as always.
There's another theme here, is like this faith that the people who have allowed this to go on for so long are now going to start improving. I read enough of the FOIA documents in which the ranchers just violated their leases and violated their leases and violated their leases. And, supposedly things were going to change and the Park Service was going to start cracking down, which I don't know what assurance they ever actually gave on that, but you pretty much are giving lip service to the public. Hey, this is the first step towards us working toward an eventual improvement that may or may not come. We don't have time for that bullshit anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to the core thing. How many people even understand that these good people get water waivers that allow them to pollute on a level that is otherwise illegal? I'd like to get some chats coming in here, because I think that that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And while we're waiting for some reaction here, I did copy a comment, or I was asking her about the waivers when it kind of came up before our activist group, like where's our stance? So on May 1st, she wrote, and I quote, "A waiver is bad." This is, by the way, folks, just for context again, waivers for Point Reyes seashore ranchers to have some of their manure runoff go into water. So Laura,
and other ranchers too, right? Not just them. And not just the Point Reyes ranchers, I'm guessing.
Well, there's also GGNRA, right? All contiguous and under the auspices of the National Park Service Management. Anyway, quote from Laura Cunningham, biologist with Western Watersheds Project: "A waiver is bad. It gives ranchers a free pass to, quotes, mitigate pollution and not follow standards. We have been fighting all these years to have actual water quality testing done by the agencies and actual enforcement of standards. Simple."
Speaking of this blind faith that the people in charge are going to start doing the right thing, like the fact that you had to organize a water testing to wake the world up to exactly how polluted things are out there. The results were astonishing enough, but the fact that other people weren't doing what you did, why weren't they doing it? And then they tried to cover it up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you're saying, indicating, it's just constantly bending and being flexible and not holding to a rigid account. It never happens until we push and push and push and push again. And even now that we have won, whatever, the ranchers are back at it, pushing again. And if we were all quiet, we activists, as some more timid people in our group were suggesting, like, hey, let's not, be greedy and out there. And I'm like, if you do that, they'll just come back and take away the win. Of course, you have to be actively fighting and protecting. Ken Boulay, by the way, who I also reached out to him just to get an explanation of what the waivers were. And he wrote this, which was helpful just to understand what's going on. He said, this waiver vote is an extension of the geography of the waiver program to include Point Reyes Seashore. Right now, nothing covers the seashore at all. So my comments below say, in effect, good, expand the geography and then raise the standard. I agree a waiver is bad. But this is, one would argue an approach to try to get some regulation there, clear up the jurisdiction, and then improve it. So that's the more measured response of describing what it is. But you and I and Laura and some others are like, it's not enough. It's just way short. It's just another delay, basically, of a half measure.
I won't say names. I'm also reading the conversation. Someone that we consider knowledgeable says, as I recall, the amended GMP discussed that. I think it said MPS and CCC agreed to further testing parameters, but that doesn't really mean anything. They agreed to further. I mean, if you did anything at all, it would be furthering, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be strict. And when agreed to further things in 2030, when Trump is building luxury resorts on Point Reyes National Seashore to go along with his Gaza projects.
You only survive as a frontline activist, which is how I describe you and me, as being completely skeptical. They're all full of BS. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, that has to be the attitude, because God knows everybody else is playing politics and saying, well, it's an improvement. We have to, like, fine, you take that role, but there's got to be frontline activists pushing for the absolute truth. And that's what you're so damn good at, and you film stuff too and show.
I mean, if they would lead by action instead of words, that would go a long way to shutting me up. Yeah. It's like, oh, look what they actually did.
Yep. And the other game is like the Coastal Commission will make occasionally some good words, but then, as you say, without action, it's easy to be skeptical of them. And then, of course, there are people like, well, we're going to gut the agency anyway, and then there's zero regulation as opposed to half measures of some regulation. So the agencies have a function if we, the people, pump them up and give them political cover and push them.
Jack, do you mind? We still have a couple of minutes. Would you like to tell everyone how bad those water results were and what you had to go through in order to get them? Or are we talking like 2021?
I have not. It's funny. Fair question.
And what have they done since that time?
So, and you know what? I don't know the current. I don't know what's happened in the last year or two. The Park Service has been, as far as I know, and as far as I hear in the chatter from people who are more engaged in it, like Robert Johnson, who took over the second year of testing. But I'm sorry. Let me start at the beginning. There was no water testing. I joined this group because I saw your film, and everyone kept saying the water's polluted by manure. It has to be, because there's 5,000 or 6,000 cows at the time back in 2017, 2018. So why aren't they testing the water? They should test the water. They're supposed to test the water. They stopped testing in 2013, if I remember correctly. Park Service, that is, to test their lessors, the ranchers. There's got to be water pollution. We should test as activists. So I had the bright idea and a big mouth to say, well, let's get together and do the testing ourselves then. To hell with it. So In Defense of Animals kicked in money. Western Watersheds Project kicked in money. We got a professional civil engineer to do the water testing, Doug Lovell, and found very high overages downstream of the dairies, especially, and ranches, with, of course, manure pollution, as there would be from all those cows shitting on the land, and then that gets washed in with rains. And someone just told me recently, it also, Liz Dodge, who's a scientist who connected me to Doug, said even during the dry season, it can percolate and leach into the ground and get into the groundwater because there's a heavy load of it there before it's all washed in heavy loads for rains. Anyway, Bob Johnson took over the second year, God bless him, and expanded the program, raised tens of thousands of dollars to pay for it all because the tester, specifically the lab, expensive, and found the same thing much more extensively, more locations, more tests, because that's what the Park Service required for them to take the numbers seriously. And of course, we took those numbers, which showed, I'd have to review my notes, but I know some of them were 300 times the allowable levels of what are called fecal indicator bacteria. And that was E. coli, which that people know, but then enterococci, and there's a third one, fecal coliform. So those three specific bacteria were the ones they were doing tests for. Each one you have to pay a separate test to identify that pathogen. It's not a pathogen. It's see, here I am out of my element here. I also have a cold, so I'm foggy. But anyway, the second year was very extensive. They couldn't push back on that. And those are the tests that we brought to the Coastal Commission that they took action on and made votes on. It actually made a dent. It was a huge amount of work. We, the activists in the community, did it all. Nothing to do with the friggin' Park Service that's supposed to be doing it.
Right.
And you're asking a very reasonable follow-up question, like, where is that now? What's happened as a result of all that effort? And I don't have the blow by blow. I have zero connection.
How about just the reaction from the ranchers and the ranch supporters when the devastating results were revealed? It was excuses. It was, oh, well, you tested at the wrong time of year, or it wasn't, oh man, well, let's do the best that we can to be kind to nature that we claim constantly to be friends with. There wasn't any of that. Just like the people who say, oh, hey, humans are suffering, don't worry about animals.
I don't know, Skyler. It's like you could conclude that the ranchers really don't care about their polluting the environment. I'd hate to say that, but I think it seems that way,
Multi-millionaires with multiple businesses, incredible amounts of land throughout California, which by itself would qualify you, at least on paper, as a millionaire. These are the people who are taking shortcuts to increase their profit margins. And I guess that's the way it is with rich people. Not all rich people, but when you love money, you can never have money enough.
Well, you left out one lovely detail, one major minor detail, which is they're also heavily subsidized by the public.
Yeah, that too.
Poor people in all the county are paying wealthy ranchers to remain wealthy. And
not only do they not have any expenses, more or less,
no taxes on the land.
We also fit the bill for the operating expenses. Free land, free water,
fixing the roads that they chop up with their machinery.
Yeah,
while destroying the park. I mean, this is why we went at these folks for so many years and still are, because there's still
extra staff in the Park Service who are basically ranch hands.
Hired hands, if you will, of their own, they're supposed to be the landlord.
Hired hands that you and I paid for.
Yeah. So anyway, folks, that's why we still work on Point Reyes, and it's protecting wildlife, which in this case was specifically not just tule elk, which were the visible species, but everything else that's affected by pollution of the park and ruining 18,000 acres of land between the park and adjacent Golden Gate National Recreation Area, the GGNRA as we call it. Ongoing, and it's still ongoing. It hasn't stopped yet.
I'm going to congratulate us on whipping through those topics, and I'm going to cut us nice and tight, unless you can remember your funny joke from earlier that I didn't allow you to make.
Yes, I can, and I know Corinne would enjoy it. I want to take a Sawzall, go into my kitchen sink, cut open a bigger hole so I can push my head down, turn on the switch, and compost myself in the comfort of my own home. And then people can take the compost. It's a little bloody, mind you. It's not as good as a chipper, but those are more expensive. I have the composter right here. It goes right into the compost, and I can go right into my garden.
Wow. Well, just put the word humane on it and maybe you can start a business.
And organic and and artisan and yeah, humane.
Make
Let's
sure you
see.
get a water waiver to dump anything extra into the creek near you.
I can get a water waiver. Well, it's just rearranging organic matter the way they do when they bring a masticator into the forest. I'm 100% organic.
All right, everyone. I think it was a good show.
What a happy note to end on, folks. So do make comments on this show if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube channel of Skyler Thomas, Watching Humans. Please make a couple comments. We're trying to get more people to see our lunacy every show, and we welcome people to come in and watch and make comments. And we'll see you every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.